Understand? Sometimes people who oppress
Mm,
you or people
mm,
who hate
mm.
you are people who are afraid of your potential. So they have to convince you or you
It's
are
actually,
enough.
yeah, it's actually people who are envious of your
Hey, they
skin.
have to convince you that you're inferior so that you can waste time chasing
Mm.
after their characteristics. Welcome to today's episode. Uh, how are you doing, Ducky?
No, I'm doing quite well, Fetty. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. So, Ducky, I was watching Malcolm X, the movie, Spike Lee movie,
Sure.
and
Sure.
there's this scene where he's in prison and he meets this guy who introduces him to Islam. So in one of
Yes.
their interactions, the guy mentions that the term black is being used against us. We were not always referred to as black people. This is
Mm,
all part of a white supremacist plan to oppress us on a subconscious level. Understand? For instance, we have like the term black. It has negative connotations. We have blackmail, we have black market, we have black magic, we have blacklist. All these negative things. I understand. So
mm.
my question to you, Manje, is for today's conversation is: when you were going, do you think the term black uh, is detrimental uh, to us as Africans? And do you agree, or we should drop this term black to refer to Africans, or at least uh, as humans we should work towards erasing all these negative connotations on the term black? Like for example, instead of saying blacklist, from the dictionary Oxford, I've seen or there are alternatives like deny list or shun list. So in Uruguay, are all these measures necessary or unnecessary, in your opinion?
Well, let's start. Let me start by saying racial definitions have evolved over time.
Yeah,
In the past, we tended to refer to each other based on our clan and our tribes. There wasn't race per se.
yeah,
We're all just human beings, right?
yeah,
So passing people came after we met with white folks, and then suddenly we started having this situation of defining each other based on race.
yeah,
Because okay, well, there are these people who are human beings, but they do not look like us, they don't have the same culture as us, they do certain things that we do not think, or we do not like, or we do not understand. So
yeah,
let us class them in this particular field, and let's class ourselves in this particular field. um Over time, these things have become people's identities. I'm black, I'm white, I'm Indian, I'm I'm Chinese, I'm Taiwanese, I'm Philippine, all kinds of definitions that are being used. And sometimes they are not even ethnic definitions, they are just nationalistic definitions.
yeah,
Europeans, like for example, Indians, there's no tribe called Indians. Indians is a nationalistic definition of people.
yeah,
And the nationalistic definition of Indians uh, then tended to become uh, more or less their ethnic definition when they are outside of India. If you go into India, they have different types of ethnic groups in India.
Yeah.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, you have your Tamils, you have I'm not sure what the others are, but you have different kinds of ethnicities or groups within India itself, and they are all Indians. But when you go across the world, you come to South Africa, anyone, irrespective of the tribe or the ethnicity they come from, if they exhibit any signs of being brown and having hair like Indians, we categorize them as Indian. Or if they have a surname that links them to Indian origin, they are Indian.
Maharaja.
So yeah, so you tend these have become our modern identities. Now, my view to these things is um I'm indifferent to these definitions. And let me tell you why I'm indifferent, right?
Yeah.
Um Being called, let's say, African or black, to me doesn't change anything. I hear the view from Malcolm X, and even Muhammad Ali used to also say or believe along these same lines, especially the people who were part of the movement of the late Elijah Muhammad, who was the one of the most charismatic and influential leaders of Black people in America, um, who more or less led the Muslim community in the Black community at the time. Now, he taught Black people like Malcolm X, your Muhammad Ali's, and other famous Black Muslims that these terms had negative connotations. But I mean, if you think about it really hard, is um, black does not necessarily always reflect or refer to, I would say, bad things. I think it's a neutral term. Yes, there have been negative connotations, but there's also positive connotations of the word black itself. Um, for example, I think if you go into space knowledge, there is things like the black hole, which does not necessarily mean something bad, but it is named like that because I think it looks black.
Okay.
And most of the clothing we wear today is black. The cars we drive today are black. And we like black. For some reason, there are people who like the color black. Um, all of these things are not necessarily negative things. If you buy most electronics, they come in color black. Okay, we have white electronics, but mostly they're black. Um, you have utensils are black. You have furniture black. You have all kinds of things that take on the color black, but they are not necessarily bad things or negative things in society. So, um, and someone might argue that, oh, well, white also has some negative things. For example, there's white toilet paper. We use toilet paper, which is white. Um, there are many other examples, maybe I can't think of now, but that might have a white noise, for example, in statistics, something that is not necessarily important in explaining a behavioral pattern of a time series variable. There are many things you can name that have the word or the color white attached to them, but they are not necessarily good things.
Okay.
So, or some things to be proud of. in a sense, right? But
Okay.
when you talk about black as in ethnicity or black as in defining a people, I mean, we are not black. I mean, most of us at least. We are, somewhere between brownish and dark brown. They are black people. I mean, if you go to South Sudan, you'll find someone who's actually black. Like as
Yeah.
in black, as in dark black, yeah. But most of us who are actually black people aren't necessarily black.
Yeah.
But for some reason we found we got labeled with this particular term, which is that's why I say I'm not indifferent. I'm not in favor of it. I'm not against it. It's something that we use now, and it's something that could be very difficult to change, considering the history of black people and white people meeting each other. For example, in South Africa, we have policies that try to benefit disadvantaged peoples, and that mainly includes black people.
Yeah.
Um, if you change the term black, you have to change all those policies as well because black doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So it's more or less like basically an administrative change, which might not necessarily benefit us in any way, except to feel good about ourselves, but will not bring any major improvement into our lives. So that's why I'm
Okay.
saying I'm indifferent, even though I do not necessarily like the term, but I do not necessarily hate the term. It's a term
Okay.
that we use because of historical significances, and that's it.
All right. So now I have questions for you, Taki. So you mentioned, yeah, so now you are indifferent. You don't necessarily hate, you don't necessarily like the term. So, but do you think, or the guy was right by saying, or it does oppress us subconsciously? Maybe when it doesn't to you, but do you think, or to other people, to other individuals, it does somehow oppress them on a subconscious level? Maybe when they hear the term black, automatically they hear they think about something negative, and when they hear the color white, they think about something positive. Things like, do you think or that happens? In your opinion, that happens or Kanja?
I think it does because when we are taught about good and evil at an early age, you associate things like heaven with white, a white robe, something clean, something pure. White is associated to something pure,
Mm,
something clean.
mm,
And then you have black, which tends to be associated with dark, with evil, um, with darkness, with hell, things like that, right?
mm.
So, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not. I mean, dude, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I wouldn't know what it does to us subconsciously. But if there are people who believe it does something to them subconsciously, maybe it does something to them subconsciously. But personally, I do not think it has an effect on me when I'm called black. I do not see necessarily, when I hear black, I do not necessarily get alarmed to think, oh, well, this might be a bad thing or something that is unfavorable or something that is undesirable in a sense. So what I can say is if there are people who believe that, it probably is true to an extent that there are people who are subconsciously feeling, subconsciously getting oppressed through being called black. Um, but in my view, I do not think it's everybody. There are people who are actually very proud of being called black. They'll mention it every second or every minute they get or every opportunity they get. I'm black and I'm proud of being black.
Yeah, but don't yeah
Um,
that
like,
the fact that there's someone out there who feels the need to say what I'm black and proud, it shows you or vele it is expected that we be black and not proud. I mean, can you imagine a white person saying I'm white and proud, or an Asian saying I'm yellow and proud, or I'm Asian and proud? You expect to hear that from black people because it's not something that is like expected to happen. Well, these days, yeah, when a person says I'm black and proud, doesn't necessarily mean anything anymore. But there was a time when a person says I'm black and beautiful, it was some kind of like a resistance or some kind of like a movement. Like when Steve Biko came up with this catchphrase, "Our black is beautiful," and he was trying to, uh, in his own words, it was a program to help black people to have confidence. He said something along these lines. So if Steve Biko
Yeah,
felt the need to
yeah.
come up with this,
I think through years of colonialism and through years of slavery. I mean, slavery affected everyone, by the way, black and white people. But through the last years of slavery and the last years and the past 100 years of colonialism and and oppression of black people before they got their independence, being black was seen as subpar. Being black was seen as someone who was half human, who was not fully human, who was a specimen of a slave, a gift from God to the white master to use at his whim, right?
mm,
So of course that history made black people, subconsciously and maybe not so subconsciously, not being proud of being black. They've always been they've been programmed to think that white is superior, white is better, white is good.
yeah. So
Um
on that, if I may stop you there,
and that is why people like Steve Biko, the like of Mangaliso, who's this guy? Um why is his name living, and my manager used to be was a granddaughter. Who's this guy? Sobukwe, yes, Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe.
mm,
These guys were trying to um reinstate the pride that black people had before they interacted with the white man, or before they were colonized and before they were cast into slavery, before they were oppressed.
yeah,
um to say you are Black people didn't always feel inferior. That's what I'm trying to say.
mm,
Black people didn't always feel inferior
yeah,
to other human beings.
mm,
That thing was inflicted upon them and socially engineered in them so that they came to believe it and acted like it.
mm. So that's why we
So
are
those
that's why
guys
we are having
were
this.
thought leaders.
Ragi, I've been
Yes,
meaning to say before I forget this. Gore, yes, now you're talking about this whole black inferiority was engineered again. It was conditioned in us again.
yes.
So this whole
Mm.
conversation, Gore na, uh, was the term black part of that engineering, in your opinion? So that's where this whole thing comes from. Us being called black,
No,
them being called
no, I
white.
would
Was
think
it part of the
no,
engineering process? If you were to, in your opinion.
no, no, I do not think it was part of the engineering process. I think when human beings observe each other, they tend to give labels to each other, right?
Mm,
Um, and saying these are black people, we are white was the easiest categorization of people, to categorize people who were different from you. And then, like I said, there are people who are actually black, and then we have different shades of being black. There's people who are brown, there are people who are light brown, there are people who look like caramelish, there's people who look
mm,
yellowish, but they're still black.
mm. And
um uh,
but
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 that but
somehow we and white people are the only groups who use color as a reference.
true. Somehow we are the two groups that use color as a reference. I don't know how that came to be, but it's something that happened in the past.
Okay,
And
so
I
you
mean,
say,
I would
wait,
I would listen. I would argue. I would argue that the term black was part of the social engineering if we're not necessarily black. If like black people, there were no black people at all.
How is that possible?
I would argue. Huh?
Okay, so Dagi, if you think or this term just came from observation, how do we explain black male, black list, black magic? Was it also just part of was it something just that just came from observation in J? People just decided, it's black list, it's black magic, it's a black pentagon referring to a prison. So all of that in J, they had nothing to do with the fact that uh, they wanted to oppress us, black people, in your opinion.
No, man. I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
um, what do we associate death with? Which color do we associate death with?
Black.
Black.
Mm.
Was it after or before black people became black people?
Now I don't know. I don't know when the term was invented. I can't be
Even
sure.
I don't know. Even I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought maybe because you watched the movie, you would know.
The movie that just points out to all the negative terms, examples of the negative connotations tied to the term black, and the positive ones tied to white. And again, white people are
Yeah,
not
but
necessarily white. Why do you think white people didn't just call themselves pink? Why couldn't they just say we are pink?
that's a very good question.
Mm.
And I do
Because
not
they are
have an
more
answer to that.
okay.
Does the color pink have negative connotations that you
Well,
might think of?
yeah, in terms of
Because
trying to
the color is feminine.
it's
The color is
feminine,
feminine.
yeah, and it wasn't always feminine. According to some sources, it was Adolf Hitler who used it to refer to femininity, apparently to designate
Is
gay
it?
people. Yeah, apparently it was to designate gay people. I'm not 100% confident about this theory. That's what I heard. Apparently, the color for women at some point it was blue, and then to designate
Okay.
gay people, Adolf Hitler used pink. I'm not sure about this theory,
All right.
but it wasn't always feminine. Pink wasn't always feminine. We were conditioned. It was made to be
Uh,
feminine.
I find pink in the LGBTQ flag, I think. Does it? No, I
Yeah,
think I find it in the transgender. I find it in the transgender.
yeah. Well, that's where you find like and it's the feminine people. Like if I may say that feminine people, can I say they're feminine? Is that offensive for Ganjan? But just yeah, you find gay people, and in that world, in the LGBTQ world, there is no toxic masculinity. There is no gender inequality. No one's looking down on another gender. So the color pink for them is positive, unlike for most straight or like
Do you
people who
believe
are
that nonsense,
whose
when?
sexualities are accepted.
Do you
So
believe when I in that nonsense? I'm asking you that question. Do you believe
what
in that
nonsense?
nonsense?
What nonsense?
That there is no toxic masculinity, there is no classism, or there is no um
Okay, let me
belief
let me
that
let me not
one
stretch
gender
it
is
that far.
above the other in the LGBTQ community. I do not think so.
Okay, let me not stretch it
I
that. Let
think
me say,
human
let me just
beings
say what
I think human beings inherently are biased, and they tend to rate things, or they tend to order things in the level designated in their heads of importance.
okay. Okay, so I just meant to say or pink will not necessarily mean feminine to them, so they will accept it. But pink, it was used to designate gay people from what I heard. And even children, when children are born, you'll find out the babies, if it's a girl, they give him pink clothes. If it's a boy, they give him blue
Mm.
clothes. Yeah. So yeah, colors. So I think yeah, maybe white people couldn't choose pink. Maybe because they wanted they chose white because white had more positive connotations. I mean, white you do not mix it with other clothes when you wash it. White is pure, it's pure, is straight line. I understand if I may put it that way. Like for example, if a person is mixed race, it's not white, but he can be black. He or she can be black. White is a one way street.
Mm.
So when I with all of this evidence, if I may call it evidence, you still don't think or
But 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 don't you think white people, because even in white people, I sense that there's a lot of tones to white people themselves,
there's a lot of what?
and there's a lot of tones in the color
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
white
I
people
think
themselves,
in all races,
and
there's not
and
one
and
color.
what I've seen is they like to be tan instead of actually being pale. They don't like
Yes,
being pale,
now you are
like
entering another
super white.
conversation. Now you are entering another conversation, Manjana. Actually, I just wrote it down for our next episode. I wanted to talk to you about that. That's our next episode.
But
But
it's
now,
relevant to this discussion as
yeah,
well.
yeah, it's the element. That's why I'm saying you are entering another conversation, which is for our next episode. So yeah, just like you said, or black is not necessarily negative. It's not really negative. Or when you are proud, there are people who are proud. And I'm telling you, even the people who oppressed us, you may find or they wanted to be black. There are those who want to be black. There are those who wanted our characteristics. I understand. Sometimes people who oppress
Mm,
you or people
mm,
who hate
mm.
you are people who are afraid of your potential. So they have to convince you or you
It's
are
actually, yeah, it's actually people who are envious of your
hey, they
skin.
have to convince you that you're inferior so that you can waste time chasing
Mm,
after their characteristics. I mean, today,
mm,
if
mm,
you check,
mm.
it's there's a school back at home where they cut off the girl's head, they make them bow. So my question is,
They make
imagine a
them
white,
bald.
yeah, imagine all the black girls. Imagine if a white girl or an Indian girl or Asian girl was to attend the school. Do you think they were going to cut her hair bald?
I don't think so.
Why not? It's because that generation before 80s, 70s backwards or 60s backwards, they were conditioned to hate everything black. They were convinced that our hair
But
is ugly.
but I don't necessarily think that's always the case. I
Yeah,
think
it's not always
in
the case,
most of these schools,
but the fact that you will not cut off the white girl's hair, it says something.
yeah, let me tell you why they do it. So
Mm,
they wouldn't do it with white people because white people tend to know their rights and they tend to stand up for their rights. Black
mm,
people do not.
mm,
Like like white people, if you must look at white people the way they way they behave in many situations, whether in the office, whether in school, whether they are buying at a restaurant. When something is not done up to the par they think they deserve, they always question and they always fight for what they believe is what is due to them.
mm,
For some reason, we black people are very timid, including black parents, for that matter.
mm,
We we do not fight for things we think are irrelevant. For white people, certain things we think are irrelevant are relevant to them, so they tend to fight for them. If you go to a restaurant and they buy fries, for example, and they find that the fries are burnt, white people will request fresh fries from that restaurant. There is something in our culture that makes us very timid, and we tend to not fight for certain things that we feel are irrelevant. On the other hand, white people will fight for things like hair, as you have mentioned. There are black people who fight for things like hair. They did here in Pretoria High, close to where I live. But those are suburban black people. It's not rural black people. Rural
Yeah,
black people tend to have certain things not on their priority list. And one of those things is hair. They do not have that thing on their priority list.
yeah,
Um, Even my former school, they don't say girls must cut their hair off, but there's certain kinds of hairstyles that they do not appreciate. Uh, they say due to them being not suitable for someone who's a learner or someone who's going to sit in front of other learners, now
yeah.
obscuring their view
That
because
makes sense. That makes sense. Obviously, not all hair can be accepted, but bald, Yona, no
exactly, you
ways.
see.
That bald is a no-no.
Yeah. So I mean, they are practical in most of these schools. And then there are schools who actually have very strict policies, like those ones who say girls must just cut their hair. Well, I'm not sure I would take my kid to that particular school, but
It's
some
doing
parents
well.
feel it's
Sona,
not
it's
a
doing
problem.
well. One of the best in my district, if not the best.
Yeah, maybe it's attractive because of the results. And a lot of black people tend to lean towards the extreme side of discipline. They like hardcore discipline. This discipline of saying no, ka 6 o'clock, at this particular point in time, at this time of the hour, there are people, black people tend to like this sense of extreme discipline. Um, I don't know where it comes from, but for some reason it comes somewhere in our culture. We tend to appreciate a lot of discipline that some of our counterparts, our white individuals and Indians, might not necessarily consider something to worry about or something to enforce.
Hmm.
So, to some parents, especially in your district, they might think that no, this is proper discipline. These kids must not have hair on their heads, they must shave, and it avoids all kinds of problems of these girls complaining to their parents that they want this hairstyle or that hairstyle and so forth. So they believe it's good because of probably those reasons. Yeah, and then they believe that school kids should not worry about things like hairstyles because they do not work. They cannot fund anyway those hairstyles. They have to be funded by parents anyway. So there's all these kinds of arguments against trying to, you know, maintain things like hair for girl children. And I mean, I cannot um, always attribute that to feeling inferior or to feeling like to hating blackness. I do not necessarily believe that. I think it's just that people do not value certain things as much as others. You know, if you take a kid from the suburbs and a kid from rural areas, a kid from the rural areas who comes from a very poor background will value things like food more than things like TV games. A kid from the suburbs already has food. He's never slept without eating something, or he's never ate something he doesn't like, or something that is considered food for poor people. So he will be worried about things that are luxurious compared to a kid who's raised in the rural areas who worries about needs instead of wants. You see? So perspective and the way and the environment someone grows up in shapes the way they view things. So I guess that is why maybe some of these rules are in these rural areas and they tend to be like they are. And maybe there's probably some reasons those teachers could tell you that why did they end up with that particular policy in the first place. We might not know how, but sometimes rules are there because of past incidences and experiences why they ended up in the first place. It was not necessarily because a white man came and told you, no, your hair is bad, your hair is bad. Then suddenly we decided, no, let's cut our hair. So we must not always try to racialize certain things that black people do. No, it's because of the white man or something like that. Sometimes you must go and ask these people why do they actually do the things they do. And you'll find out that some of the reasons might be logical and reasonable reasons outside of just feeling inferior or feeling that black hair is bad. Because there are schools who just prefer girls with their short hair combed nicely, and that's okay. They appreciate those kinds of that kind of a hairstyle, if you may call it that. And then there's the extreme ones like the one you've just mentioned to just prefer girls to cut their hair. We don't know the reason. We don't know why, how it ended up in becoming a rule like that in the school. We don't know. But for some reason, parents accept it because the school has discipline and the kids do well in that particular school.
Okay, let's talk about we're just touching on it and then we are ending this because I'm running out of battery. And we were not supposed to get this far even. So you mentioned the Pretoria School for Girls again. They were saying they don't allow
Yes.
natural African hair. What do you think was
Yes,
the
afros. Not necessarily natural African hair. No, they're not saying that. They were saying afros.
they don't want afros?
Yeah.
What do they want if they don't want afros?
They want hair that is combable to the back, or those sisters that are combable to the, like, the what do they call these basic braids? Straight backs or something like that. They
So
didn't necessarily want these big loosey hair,
they don't want the
for a
afro,
kid
something
in
that
school.
like grows naturally. If you just let it growing and you comb it, they don't want it. They want you to do the
Ye-
braces, and the braids are painful and itchy and a lot of maintenance. That's what they want, but not the afro. But maybe you have a point. Maybe I'm rationalizing where there's
Even
not
even
necessarily
Afro is a
racism.
lot of maintenance, to be honest. If we are being honest with ourselves, even in Afro is a lot of maintenance.
Well, I did braid. That personally, I did braids, and after a week, yo, I was crying, and I went back to afro. Braids are itchy. A lot of hair products to maintain it. You have to wear those bandanas or whatever to cover it so that it doesn't get ruined quickly. And you have to change it after at least, like as I said, after a week, it was already ruined. And you have to change it, and it's expensive to
Mm.
get another braid, another hairstyle, any braids. It's a lot compared to afro. That's what I'm saying. What yeah. For them to not want afro, yo, it's
But
just
but
something.
but you know, girls, girls take these things a notch up. The products they use to maintain these large and lovely afros, they are very expensive themselves.
Okay, I'll say on my experience,
If
it
you
was more
ask any black girl
experience.
today,
It was more
if you
expensive
ask
for
any
braids.
black girl today, they will tell you that, Kerry, if you ask any black girl today and you tell them what do they prefer, braiding or having an afro, they will tell you braiding because they say maintaining an afro is very expensive, at least according to them.
Well, now I'll say I can't speak on their behalf, but I'll say or an afro is just painful to comb, but to look after it's cheaper compared to braids.
I mean, that's your view. Pelabona, they even care about the texture of the hair. I don't know what do they call the other thing, but they care about a lot of things, girls, man.
Well, I
When
guess
I
I
had
don't
a
know.
guy, you might
I
not
guess
care
I
about
don't know
those things.
much about the hair. I just know
Oh
from my
yeah, the
experience.
volume. They care about volume. They care about the texture. They care about it being curly and all those things. So those kinds of things tend to get them into a situation whereby they pay for these costly hair products.
So, but what would be the reason for a school to say we don't want afro?
And every day you have to comb an afro, and a straight back you don't have to comb every day.
You don't have to comb every day, but you have to maintain it. You have to watch how you sleep. You have to wear something on the head. Have to spray it. You have to change it
Yeah,
once in a while. Once in a short while.
and that once in a while, maybe it's probably 2 weeks for some.
And it's expensive to get another braid. You have to pay someone to do it for you.
Well, it depends who's doing. But I mean, I'm not talking about hairpiece here. I'm
And
talking
it's
about
like
a
an
normal
hour. It
straight
can
back.
take like an
Like,
hour. It can take like an hour to do a braid.
I
So
agree, it takes time, but without using those artificial hair, it's not as expensive as using those artificial hair.
Okay. Anyway, we were not supposed to dwell much on this. I'm almost out, man. People had cuts and not record this whole thing. Let me just finish with one last question. Try to be quick. Um, so my question is, do you think white people are benefiting from the term white somehow?
Yeah, they are benefiting.
Okay, wait, don't continue. Do you think there are some people who tend to subconsciously think that darker skinned Africans are more Africans than lighter skinned Africans, which leads to reverse colorism or can lead to reverse colorism?
I do think so. There's a lot of dark-skinned black people and a lot of and a lot of stereotypes associated with light-skinned people. Light-skinned males are women, light-skinned males are weak, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah,
Um,
can we imagine making a Black Panther movie and this time we have a yellow-skinned African playing T'Challa, the Black Panther? How do you think people would react to that?
I don't know, man. I don't really know, but I don't think it will have. I don't think it will have the same vigor and the same cell like it has. I mean, take for example the movie Shaka Zulu.
Yeah,
There are some historians who believe like that Shaka Zulu was a light skinned guy,
yeah,
but every depiction of Shaka Zulu has always been dark skinned guys.
yeah.
Like for some
So,
reason, people believe that for him to be as great as he was and powerful as he was, and for some reason, you have to be black to be fearless. The word fearless has to be somehow be combined with someone who's super black, who's dark skinned. No,
black is
light skinned
associated with
niggas
power.
are not fearless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's associated with power, associated with strength, associated with charisma, all those beautiful traits that black people tend to aspire to.
So now it's affecting even us negatively. Color. Ah,
Yeah, color has always been a problem. Even Indians discriminate amongst themselves because of color. The lighter ones discriminate against the dark-skinned ones.
so we have white people wanting to be darker, black black people wanting to be lighter. It's like
Yes.
we have
It's a mixed
Asians who are
masala.
yellow and they want to be pale. Like you've seen these women, especially the women, like most of the times you find these women, they are pale, they're not yellow. White Asian, I
Mm.
mean the Asians, the females. So I guess
Yeah,
again of the day you
yeah,
might be right. This you might find that maybe it was part of the engineering process. Maybe now it's not so much that this thing colorism exists in our heads. And there are people who are maybe oppressed. There are those who are not oppressed. Like as you say, you are one of those people. So I guess yeah, it's there's a lot to this. There's a lot to this conversation. But I'd like for us to end it here.
yeah. No, no, it's a very deep conversation and a complex one. And I
Yeah,
think the world is complex. And
yeah,
unfortunately, for people, they want to find two answers to a particular question. It's either something is black or white, or it's either something is dark or blue, or it's
yeah.
either something is right or wrong. But the world is so much complex than that.
Anyway, Dagi. Um, next time, uh, we have to talk about the ISIS papers, the book by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. It talks about the roots of racism, blah blah blah, and stuff. So I don't want you to forget about it. Next time, just in case I come up with something else. You say no, the ISIS papers. All right. Anyway, that's
Okay,
all for
no problem.
today.
I will look into them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all for today. Next week we continue on this conversation. Uh, on another perspective. So anyway, thanks for
Sure.
today. Sharp, sharp.
Sharp, sharp.